All right. Monday night, back for the Ask Me Anything, as we usually do. Appreciate you guys taking time out of your Monday. Come hang out with me and ask great questions. We got a lot to run through tonight. Few things have happened since Wednesday last week. Price has moved up a little bit across the crypto market. So we'll start there before we get into Bessent and his speech today that I don't know if you guys watched or not. So we've got a move here, which is nice. You know, back around $1.50 for XRP, back up to, where is Bitcoin? We're back at 80,000. I saw it pop a little bit even further today. We are, yeah, right about 80,000, 79,688 at the moment. So excited to see some green on the board. We were talking about it last week, you know, and the last couple weeks about potentially being at the bottom. I would say it's confirmed at this point that that was the bottom. The bottom is in for the bear market. I know a lot of people are going to tell you that, you know, there's going to be volatility and we're going to pull back and this is a, you know, bull trap and blah, blah, blah. All the markers of previous bottoms have now been confirmed. So it would be a wild situation, which we'll talk about here in a little bit if we did see a substantial pullback in the market. I do think we're in for volatility. So I'm not going to say that, you know, there's not a possibility that it couldn't pull back, that it's 100%, you know, not going to go back there. But every marker that's happened in previous bear markets when it's become a bull market has now crossed the line. So those that were waiting for 80 cent XRP or 90 cent XRP or, you know, $40,000 or $50,000 Bitcoin, not looking real good for those trades. Hate to say it. For those that did continue to dollar cost average during the bear market and continue to mount their positions or average down if you did buy in the previous bull market, I think you're going to be just fine. So exciting to see that. We have paused out here. You know, we did have 3 days of a really good rally for XRP. I think it reached all the way up to $1.70, you know, a 70% move in 3 days. Cooling off here a little bit. There was a 5-wave move to the upside. I'm not a TA guy. You guys know that. But, you know, we got a bull flag forming here, and I do think we're in for another move or another breakout. We haven't seen open interest really like pile in. We did have over 3 billion in open interest, and we did see a nasty wick on Saturday night down to $1.06. So, you know, if we were going to get a systemic breakdown after that big move, that would have been it. But we've recovered and consolidated here at $1.50, and it is poised, in my opinion, for a move higher. And that's a good time for my disclaimer. Nothing here is financial advice. You should always speak with a financial professional or before making any investment decisions. This is for entertainment and educational purposes, and any opinions I share are my opinions. They are not the opinions of DAG or any of its subsidiaries. We do have financial advisors. You can talk to them if you would like to, and they can help you navigate this market. So this person says they were scammed by somebody saying they were me. I wish I could get rid of all the scammers, dude. I'm sorry that happened to you. We literally delete and block over 500 accounts across all of our platforms every single day. You know, other people somehow get meta verified and, you know, other stuff on different platforms. It's just wild to me that they would do that.
Fake driver's license, that's what
Oh, they're now sending out fake driver's license that's mine. So I won't say my birthday on here.
Well, the driver's license says January 1st, so that should be.
Oh, okay. Well, right? Yeah, my birthday is not January 1st. So if anybody asks you how much XRP you have, if they ask you if you're a holder, if they ask you to send your XRP somewhere, if they tell you about a Telegram channel or a WhatsApp channel or anything other than, you know, we have a Discord. There are other crazy fake Discords out there too. But ours is beyondbroke.com. That's the only place that we have a community. And I will never ask you for your XRP or tell you to send it anywhere. Our team won't either. On the financial advising side, they will communicate through email. Only at dag.com is the only email that we use. And, you know, unless you're talking to a financial advisor, we're not going to ask you to send your XRP anywhere. So very sorry that happened to you. You are not alone. There have been many people that unfortunately have been taken by fake accounts out there. Those are not me. I wish I had time to talk to everybody and answer all my DMs. I do not. So my wife will respond to DMs on most platforms, and it is mostly me on Twitter. But those are the only two places that we are conversing. And again, she's never going to tell you to send your XRP somewhere either. It's always, refers you over to a financial advisor or a team for the other products and services that we sell. So with it, now that the disclaimer's out of the way, let's get into the fun stuff. Let's get into macro and where we are at. So Bessent today comes out and says that any organizations or those that are money transmitters or anybody that has tethered themselves to Iran is now in the crosshairs of the US government, and they're going to use unprecedented actions against them. Words mean things. I'm not going to say that it's 100% tether, but you guys know my position on that. There was a conversation that I had on Twitter years ago after I put out the domino theory in 2024, where I went back and forth with a certain individual and somebody else that used to work at Ripple. And in that conversation, it was discussed that the US government could sanction Tether. Here we are 2.5 years later, and that is on the table with what's going on over there with the Strait of Hormuz being shut down and the war that's going on. They are trying to cripple them financially and not allow them any way to be able to be funded. So it would not surprise me. We've already set precedent here in the US that we can sanction a protocol. We saw that with Tornado Cash. Now, could they sanction Bitcoin? Man, that one's hard. It could happen. It could happen. I'm not calling for that one, but I do think Tether is in the crosshairs here. And, a lot of people will say Howard Lutnick, and them being on the board and at the White House and all of those things. I think that Tether has been a very useful tool for the US government for an extended period of time. They have soaked up treasuries that have flown onto the market and been buyers for those treasuries to back their stablecoin. They just went through their audit with KPMG. They do have the collateral, at least in 2025, to be able to cover everything that they said that they had out. They did just mint another billion Tether over the weekend here as we saw the market move up. Can they do that because they have additional cash flows, or is that because Bitcoin and other assets on their balance sheet were appreciating? I don't know. We just know that they've been audited and the collateral that they said was there is there. That does not mean that the collateral is, tier one only treasuries. If it were, they would be a US compliant stablecoin and they would not have launched USAT, right? Like, why would you need to launch another US dollar denominated stablecoin if you intended to get the other one into the parameters? So that's kind of my expectation here. We will see if that plays out or not. But I want to say this, like, if you wanted to orchestrate this crisis and rotate liquidity where you needed to move it, when you needed to move it there, the US has set ourselves up perfectly for this whole situation. So, people have said, well, oil spiked and nothing happened. That's true. Oil did spike and nothing has happened to this point. But now we have depleted oil reserves globally. I don't know if you guys saw yesterday evening and early today, there's a few airports that have run out of fuel for their jets and commercial airplanes. That's not good. That is a shortage. We did release another 5 million barrels this morning from the strategic reserve. We are now close to 40, 45 million barrels over the minimum, the absolute minimum that we have to keep in the reserve. I still expect that the US will stop exports at some point in order to be able to refill that reserve. And if you had that switch at your disposal and you knew when you could pull that trigger, and you now have stablecoin regulation around the corner to be able to stabilize the bond market, have Bessent also coming out and saying that they have $1 trillion that they're going to be placing on the long end of the bond curve. Everybody that's buying US treasuries to be able to back stablecoins, they're buying short duration treasuries, 1 to 3 to 5 years maybe. They're not buying the long end of the yield curve. So if we saw a huge sell-off in treasuries on the long end of the yield curve, they would need liquidity in order to be able to stabilize that as well. We now have that. The US government's allocated another $1 trillion in order to be able to buy that end of the curve and suppress those yields as they skyrocket when we see huge sell-off in the bond market. So they've got all their bases covered as far as I can tell. And they also have the switch to set this whole thing off ready to go. And they get to time it whenever they feel it's appropriate. So to watch this play out and see the leverage and the positioning for this transition and how the U.S. has positioned ourselves strategically to be able to be methodical about all this and roll it out exactly on the cadence that they want to, is just wild to me. And that's also, why it's taken so long. I think they have been very methodical about everything I laid out in the domino theory. And maybe I thought, to be honest with you, I did think that this was going to be a bit more aggressive and a bit more fast pace, and they wouldn't quite be in control of everything. And that was probably naive of me to believe that. But with everything that's played out now, we're waiting on stablecoin regulation. As soon as the OCC gives the go-ahead, we've already started to see a rotation through the ETFs and other products back into crypto here. The money is out there in the markets. We have all-time highs in the stock market to be able to rotate into these ETFs to be able to drive price where they need it to go when they need to drive it there. I don't really see much left, holding this whole deal up from actually taking place. So whenever the U.S. decides it's time and we decide that we're going to stop exporting oil, I was actually at a conference on Friday last week and down in Austin. It was around AI and energy and some blockchain infrastructure, and how all that plays together. And the first gentleman that spoke, his name was Wish. He's a founder. He works with AI data centers. Also, just side tangent here, because of the compute that's on these chips and how fast that's growing, water is no longer going to be a viable option to be able to cool these data centers. So everybody that's up in arms about, data centers taking their water and all of that, it's literally not feasible with the technology and as fast as it's progressing. They've got a cooling plate that'll sit next to the chips, and they're also submerging the chips and everything else in a cooling liquid that is not water. So over the next 2 years, 90% of the water requirement for the data centers today is going to go away. They're going to have to pivot away from that. So if that's a concern of yours, you got a data center coming up in your area, just be aware that other people are aware of this problem and they've found solutions for it. So back to this here. Energy costs are going to continue to rise, but what he shared in his PowerPoint when he was speaking was a heat map of the countries that were most affected by the Strait of Hormuz and oil and energy from that region. The US is a little blip on there. We are pretty self-sufficient when it comes to it. Japan was the largest affected country because that is where they were deriving the majority of their energy from, their oil, their gas, everything. So if we knew that and that was going to be the choke point, very strategic that was what was cut off. And now, Japan is pretty well reliant on the US for our oil and energy. We are the largest exporter globally, and when we decide that we're going to turn that off or slow that down, they're going to be in a bad spot. They're going to have to raise interest rates. They're going to have to pivot, and if they raise interest rates, their economy started to slow. So their GDP and their growth actually didn't meet the benchmarks or what the expectations were in their last release. So their economy is starting to slow. Their interest rates and their bond yields are starting to rise. The only other option that they're going to have, because they can't print more money, it's more inflation, it's more inflationary. If they raise interest rates, it's more inflationary. They actually need to lower interest rates. If the only two levers that they had were print more money or lower interest rates to be able to drive economic growth, they're going to catch 22. If they move to real-time settlement, if they move their payments on blockchain and the velocity of money picks up, the two constraints that create inflation in an economy are how much M2 money supply, or how much money's out there, and how fast that money moves across an economy. So I pay the cab driver $1, he buys a hot dog, the next guy pays his rent. That dollar moved pretty quickly. Dollars are not moving. Money is not moving. People are hoarding cash. They're stuffing it wherever they can to be able to hold its value because they're aware of the inflation that we're experiencing. So the velocity of money is at an all-time low. We have to pick that up. So we need to be able to drive velocity of money without reducing interest rates and be able to reduce M2 money supply globally. And the only way they're going to be able to do that is to tokenize everything and move everything on blockchain and, stable coins and all the other fun stuff that we know is right here on the horizon here at the end of 2026. So I do think Japan's going to be the first adopter of that. I do think that XRP is going to be the primary mechanism by which they do that. They may be the demand that drives the price to, a short-term plateau, and then the rest of the world, I think, will pivot there. And if Tether is no longer a viable option as a protocol to be able to transact, then they would probably pivot to Bitcoin there in Iran. But that's slow and costly in order to move money, especially with the energy costs that are going to be higher and higher. There's going to be a consolidation of the miners. And now that we've seen, the pivot of the infrastructure for many miners over to data center compute, there's less and less miners on the open market that are going to be validating those transactions. The throughput on the network could potentially go down and cost more. So that's no longer a viable option. The benefit of the XRPL globally for adoption at a sovereign level for issuance of currency is that no one counterparty can sanction other counterparties on that protocol or network. With Tether, there's an issuer, and that issuer can be compelled. We've already seen that happen to freeze accounts and do other things. They can claw that asset back. They can freeze it. With XRP, you cannot. You can blacklist another wallet, but you cannot keep somebody else from participating on the network. The origin account was black holed. That's why they can't create more XRP. And this is why also, other nations such as Russia, North Korea, Iran, places that are sanctioned by the US would adopt this technology because it doesn't force them out of the system. But the US could say, we don't want to do business with you. We're going to blacklist your wallets. And then, we don't do business with them, but they can still do business with other people. So that's where that's at. We did see some news that came out also that Tether's mining facility has had its power cut off. I don't know if that is true or not. Still waiting on certain news sources to come out and say that that is the case. But if that is the case and they aren't paying their power bill there, which was what was stated as the reason, that's concerning to me. Why wouldn't Tether be paying their power bill for their Bitcoin mining? It's very odd timing of Bessent coming out today and then that also being something in the news. I think it all plays together. You kind of have to back out and look at the whole picture. If you haven't listened to my domino theory, I would encourage you to go back and look at that. I think it's a pretty comprehensive outlook. Many of the things in that have taken place, and many of those shoes are still, waiting to drop based on the cadence of dominoes and how they're structured. So we do have some super chats. And again, appreciate you guys taking time out of your Monday. Come hang out with me and ask great questions. Please like, subscribe, share, hype the video if you're over there on YouTube. We're on YouTube, X, Facebook, and over here on TikTok. And we do these every Monday and Wednesday night. All right, we'll go ahead and jump into the super chats and get it rocking and rolling. We'll hang out with you guys for a couple hours tonight. First one is from Panda71. They say, not financial advice, mastermind, social member. Appreciate you being part of the group. He says, I hope to catch this last XRP dip and lower my DCA. This was Wednesday last week, so I don't think you're going to get the chance, my man. He says, I hold an amount of XRP, top 2% holder since 2025, an average of $2.40. Holding Iraqi dinar, and I want to liquidate my last 2.5 million dinar for 2,300 bucks USD. Thoughts? I know the answer, just needs some good confirmation, bias, support, dinar revalue or denomination. Question mark. Been holding dinar since 2014. Missed Bitcoin and XRP. Looking forward to onboarding with DAG. Thanks for your content and knowledge. Not gonna lie, those node guys freak me out a little bit. Everybody's got their opinion, and I'm just glad that they have some type of framework for how they value crypto. I think that everybody needs some type of framework on how you value these assets, and whether your framework's right or wrong, again, I'm not here to argue that, but at least they have something in place for them to be able to value these things and predicate their investments on. If you're working with a financial advisor, that's what they're going to help you do. So it was cool to see that they had an actual three-pronged framework for, how they look at things. Very retail-driven point of view, very community, grassroots, developer-driven point of view. XRP, I believe, is more of an institutional play, right? XLM probably in the same category, HBAR, XDC. These are real-world applications that institutions and enterprises are going to be using the protocol in order to be able to solve. Whereas I don't want to, hype is kind of that. They have Their perps market, they make a lot of money doing that, and they buy back the token and burn it in order to be able to drive the supply. I think Hype just hit a new all-time high here this week, so cool to see on that side. But yeah, I didn't mind the conversation. But back to the Iraqi dinar real quick. We have a lot of clients that hold significant positions in foreign currencies. Many of the family offices that I talk to have positions in foreign currencies. I will say this. There is not one single family office that I have ever talked to that holds the dinar. Like billionaires, centimillionaires, people that are managing a lot of money. They have Swiss francs, they have the yen, they have the Brazilian real, they have the euro, they have allocations in other markets denominated in other currencies. There is not a single one of them that I have ever talked to that holds any dinar. Does that make it a bad investment? No. There are very few family offices that I talk to that hold XRP before we have a conversation. So it's not to say there's not upside or opportunity there. It's just not something that people that have already made their money are looking at. I do think it's going to be a exchange between the old currency and a new currency that they issue at some predetermined ratio. I'm hesitant to believe that they will revalue the currency that currently exists on the market. As it sits today, you know, people have been talking literally since 2014. I remember talking to a gentleman, it had to have been when I was in high school. So, you know, 2007, 2008, that had a bunch of dinar back then. I'm sure he's actually passed on because he was very old then. But people have been talking about this for close to 20 years. So not to say that it won't play out. With other revaluations that have happened in other countries, there's always been a new currency issued and an exchange rate of the old currency to the new one. So if you do think that that exchange rate is going to be favorable and at a higher price than what exists today, there still may be upside there. Not anything that I deal with or hold. It's not anything that I speculate on. But like I said, we do have a lot of clients that have a position in that, and I hope I'm way off, and I hope they make a ton of money. And I'm wrong on that one. All right, let's go ahead and jump into the other questions here. I did receive another super chat that I will address separately. It's about the new products that we are rolling out. I don't know if I can announce that formally yet. We have people subscribing to the new product that we're going to be launching on September 1st. It's a limited capacity. 50 million is what we can put into it, dollars. So whatever the value of XRP is going to be, you know, at the end of this month is what will be put into that product. We do get a credit line. It's 50% of that value. That credit line is then what's traded in the strategy. This is the first ever SMA product for crypto. So your assets will be held separately in your account, reflected off exchange, and then traded in that strategy. It's actually inside the same ecosystem, so not even off of the exchange. It's just, so like there's always a separation, at least at Anchorage. If things are done right, you'll have the custodian where assets are held, and then you have a trading venue that's separate. So if the trading venue has, you know, issues, goes bankrupt, whatever, this is still standalone, separate. There's no issues, bankruptcy remote, insured up to $100 million. Segregated accounts. Again, that's the whole like piece that we want specifically, is the segregated accounts. Up to this point, anybody that's created any products in crypto, including ourselves with the hedge fund that we have, it's been pooled, right? Not my fave. I would prefer my assets to stay my assets in my account, and that's what we've structured moving forward. So if you do have questions, if you want to participate in that product, we do have a promotion right now. 25,000 XRP is our minimum until September 4th. So if you meet that, you want institutional custody, you want the best institutional custody over there at Anchorage, you want an advisor, you want access to the other products that we're going to be rolling out, which I can't quite talk about yet. We will keep you guys updated as soon as I can. Believe me, I can't wait to make that announcement. But that one, the one that I'm talking about in my mind here, will be open to all of our clients, and it will be a yield product when we roll it out that would more than cover fees and pay a little bit extra to everybody participating in it. And I think you guys will like the counterparty. So without further ado, we'll jump into the rest of them here. And again, appreciate the people. If I missed your super chat, same as these gentlemen here, all you got to do is email it in just over there to info@dag.com. and they will pass it along to my wife, and I will read it on Wednesday. Too Many Dans, he was in the mastermind earlier today. Good to see you, dude. He says, seems like I have made it through my first bear market. Definitely had moments of little faith. The mastermind, you, and the town halls, the mods guidance kept me going. Did continue to DCA and bought the dips. Thanks for all that you do, legend. Cheers, my man. Congratulations. It is not an easy task. You know, to get through a bear market and have your portfolio be down substantially, 50, 60, 70, 80% at certain times, and feel the weight of that is not fun. It is a gut-wrenching experience to look at that dollar amount continue to drop and then continue to buy, like fight your emotions and do what is logically, if you believe in something and you know that it is going to turn the corner and do well over the long term. Stocks are the same way, really any type of investing. If you liked it at $2, you loved it at $1. Most people don't feel that way. Most people liked it at $2 and would have liked it better at $4. And because it didn't go there, they lost faith in it and sold it off. A lot of people capitulating about a week and a half ago, right before the move here. I saw numerous posts on Twitter saying that, I'm giving it up. I'm changing ecosystems. I'm selling it. I'm going to the stock market, which is like normal. Again, this is my third one that I've been through, and it's rough. It's not a fun experience. And, but I will say, based on all the indicators, that we have bottomed here. I know a lot of people are leery of this move and they think that we're going to see a pullback. I don't see that happening. I think a lot of people got left behind, and they're also waiting for that moment again, and they're going to get left behind again. Caleb B says, is the U.S. intentionally dismantling dollar hegemony to fix domestic manufacturing, letting a multipolar trade freely while secretly leveraging XRP as a neutral bridge asset behind the scenes? I think so. So if you're familiar with Bretton Woods in 1944, John Maynard Keynes talked about the Triffin's dilemma. This has happened in the last 5 cycles for any reserve currency globally. Basically, whoever becomes a global reserve currency will export inflation. And when they do that, they hollow out their manufacturing and send it overseas because it becomes cheaper to be able to get the labor and everything else overseas. And also you want to export that inflation so that you don't have that domestically in your country. And he was right. And that's exactly what happened. We were the world's largest creditor nation. We are now the world's largest debtor nation. And if you saw a way out of this, and you didn't want any one counterparty to become the global reserve currency on the other side of it to be, above you or the authority, like a China or a Russia, which would be the two that had the opportunity, you would set up a system where at least you could continue to participate on your own merits in your GDP. Our GDP is primarily driven by consumption here in the US. 70% of our GDP is consumption. They've invoked these tariffs. They've been now rejected by Congress that, we can't do that, blah, blah, blah. In the late 1800s, we did have tariffs, and we actually made positive revenue off of that. To do that today is difficult because those costs get passed on to the consumer. Corporations are, publicly traded, and if their costs go up, they just pass those costs on to the consumer because people are used to paying higher and higher prices because of the inflation that we have on our money. So they keep their margins, and it ends up being the end consumer that pays for the tariffs, which sucks. But if you were in your last presidency, a lot of people speculating that Trump gets a third term somehow. He comes back as a vice president, and the president steps down, and then he gets a third term. I don't know if that's going to happen or not. It could. I'm not going to say it's out of the question. But if you were in your last elected term, you can do a lot of things that are unfavorable. You can put a population under some pain, and it requires some suffering in order to get things in order, right? Like, it's not going to be a fun situation in order to rectify all the problems that we have. And one of those things is paying the cost to be able to repatriate the manufacturing that we've offshored over the last 80 years. we need that back here. That became very apparent during COVID, right? Like there was a lot of things that you just couldn't get. Toilet paper. I don't know if you guys remember the toilet paper shortage. Everybody stockpiling toilet paper, or pharmaceuticals. There was just a lot of things that we don't make here anymore. And so that's a problem. And we need ways to be able to drive manufacturing back here to the U.S. Tariffs is one of those. And I think there's a few other mechanisms that are in the works to be able to repatriate that manufacturing. But the neutral bridge asset and everybody competing on their own merits in a level playing field is definitely a component for that transition. Southern Rock Singer, good to see you. He says, sup, Jake. What are the pros and cons of bringing 25K into XRP to DAG custody per the new promotion? Will it be 100% safe? Can it be put to work, earn a yield? What are the costs involved? Yeah, we run through all of it, man. I appreciate you bringing it up. So we provide institutional custody and insurance over there at Anchorage. You have your own account. So it's not like an exchange where you send your XRP there and it's their XRP. We do have discretion over the assets, just like any other advisor would have. You do sign that. But we talk to our clients. We basically do what you say with the XRP. We really can't do anything unless you subscribe to a product with it. We can't move it off the platform without your you signing that transaction, which is a multi-sig. It requires a few different components in order to be able to move the assets off the platform. We then have to sign on our side. It is a 24-hour SLA to get the assets back to you if you do want to remove them. And that's a good and bad thing, right? Like I'm very used to just being able to move stuff around at the drop of a hat. If I want to send XRP somewhere, it lands in 3 to 5 seconds. Exchanges take a little bit longer. But the benefit of a little bit of friction there is if there is some fishy business or something goes awry, we have time to catch it. We also whitelist wallets. So if you want to move assets off, you will whitelist a wallet and basically sign that transaction that's a verified address that you have access to. And that's the only place that you can take it. So multiple different layers of security. Again, there's a reason that BlackRock holds their assets at Anchorage. It's the best institutional custody that exists in the world, in my opinion. We are looking to be multi-custodial and add additional custodians because, again, there's siloed risk being only at Anchorage. We've onboarded with BitGo. We're onboarding with some other custodians. And the theme or what we're trying to accomplish over the long term is to be multi-custodial all in one UI so that you guys can see all of your assets where they're at, how they're being put to work, be able to participate in whatever products and services each one of these custodians has, all in one unified platform, make it very easy and simple for you to be able to earn returns and deploy your capital and manage everything. So as it sits today, you'll have a securitized portal. You'll be able to log into that. You'll have an advisor. If you want to do something with the assets, whether that's remove them or put them to work in something, you have to sign things, and there's a process to go through that. If you are sanctioned or you're a terrorist or you're politically exposed, we probably won't be able to work with you. You have to go through KYB, KYC, AML, BIS, OFAC, all the stuff in order to be able to work with us. The fee is $1,000 to onboard. We have hard costs that we have with Anchorage. And for compliance and other stuff in order to be able to set up the account. It is an FBO account or for the benefit of, like I said before, your assets are not pooled with other people unless you participate in certain products like our hedge fund. But your assets will sit there in your wallet. You can look at them, pull it up anytime. Insured up to $100 million per account. That I'll just say that insurance is on the total aggregate stuff that we have. We do have species that we've worked out with Woodruff Sawyer. If your assets are above that amount, you would like additional insurance, we have a way to be able to do that because that's a concern of mine. As things appreciate, we're going to have a lot of people that are above that minimum amount of insurance, That's the largest amount of insurance that any custodian out there that I'm aware of has on crime insurance. So, again, different types of insurance. There's insurance on the infrastructure, exchanges and Fireblocks and many others will have insurance on that side. It's not for crime insurance. And if you are going to work with a different custodian, that is something you would want to ask them is what is your crime insurance that you guys have on the vaults or the wallets that you have in your infrastructure. You get an advisor. They're going to give you a financial plan. They're going to walk through scenarios with you. They're going to be able to map out an exit plan in order to be able to pay off debts or get the cash flow that you're looking for, or leverage your assets in a low risk way in order to be able to borrow against them, in order to be able to get liquidity tax free. They're going to make sure that they walk you through the costs associated with all that. We do have AUM fees, just like any other financial advisor. We're 2% for anything less than 5 million. Between 5 million and 10 million, that drops to 50 basis points. Anything over $10 million in net asset value is 40 basis points annually. Those fees are paid monthly. So if you are less than $100 a month, that is the minimum payment that we have. I look at it, personally more like an insurance policy on my assets. They're super safe over there. Again, best custody in the world, in my opinion. BlackRock wouldn't be holding their assets there if it wasn't. So you get all those assurances, you get the advisor, you get a financial plan, and you get access to all the products that we're going to be rolling out here toward the end of the year. We're going to be launching at least one product a month for the duration of the rest of the year. And I'm hopeful that it'll actually be, multiple products each month. So if I was going to give you my best guess, we should have somewhere between 5 and 8 products live in December this year that people can participate in with their XRP held there at Anchorage, working with DAG Wealth. So I will say this, it's kind of a first come, first serve thing. The people that have been there will get access to things. The people that have paid fees and, continued to work with us and supported the business and done well. Loyalty is a big deal to us. And we always want to take care of our current clients. We want to grow our business too, obviously, and continue to provide the services and products at scale and democratize access to things. But we don't take it lightly that a lot of people have paid AUM fees without these products available to be able to cover those costs for a substantial amount of time. And we really value those people. So this product that we're rolling out September 1st is a bit more exclusive, but it is the gateway to much larger liquidity and access to products that we'll be able to roll out in a much more frequent basis because of how we structured it. All right. Hopefully that answered your question. I know that was probably more than you than you wanted. Bain Train, he says, under Basel, XRP is group 2B at 1,250% risk. Moving it to HQLA level 1A looks like a multi-year overhaul. BSBC consultation, new math standard, then 28 national rulemakings. What's your understanding of that process and timeline? It's definitely a process with the BIS and those to be able to move to, a tier 1 designation. There's a risk committee, and to your point, at the moment, it's very volatile and too high of a risk for premium collateral. I do think that it will be a faster process once it's the backbone of the financial markets. Once it's a high stable value, that risk would come down substantially. It will take some additional work. It's probably, I think XRP will be $10,000 when they designate it a tier 1 asset. And if you listen to Crypto Phoenix, he talks about administrative repricing. I think he would probably agree with me on that price threshold for it to be viable in that situation, to be able to back derivatives and sit in that spot. How we get there, is a little bit different. I think we're both 100% sure on the outcome. But the path there, I don't like to argue about semantics. If he's right, I'm also cool with that. It's still the same outcome. I think it'll be priced through supply and demand dynamics. And then once it's a high enough value that they can start using it, the flywheel will take place. The price will continue to rise. And to your point, it is a bit of a process to get that designation. And that gives them a little bit more time to be able to overhaul those different components and the rulemaking that you mentioned in order to be able to get it to that position. So, I'm thinking Q1, Q2 next year is when we would see that type of designation given to XRP, predicated on the fact that, the reverse carry trade unwinds, there's systemic risk, there's liquidity crisis, there's multiple ETFs that are rolled out, and we get a substantially higher price for it, and it does become the backing for financial markets globally. Let's see here. Crypto finance. I don't know if you change your name or I appreciate the support. He always asks, kind of more time-based questions and riddle stuff. He says, hey, Jake, You've been saying that XRP would rise during the reverse carry trade, and now you're saying that the rise has already started. The million-dollar question: what happens to all this upward momentum when the reverse carry trade arrives and XRP falls back to $1.80? I don't think that's going to happen. I think they're going to run it up to like 50 or $100 in order to be able to have a liquidity buffer in XRP when that unwinds. Tether's also going to impact XRP's price. To your point, there's going to be a couple different things that are catalysts here. And like I said, there's going to be volatility when that happens. But as we see the rotation of liquidity back into XRP to be able to push it to the value they need it to be, it will rise during that playing out. So we've started to see the move of them pushing liquidity into XRP to be able to stabilize it when all of that unfolds. How high does it go before that? You know, there's a lot of TA people telling you 5, 10, 15, 20 bucks. That's possible. And then we see this unwind and we see a pullback to, you know, some level here. I don't think we're getting back to $1.80 though. I know a lot of people are saying that and hopeful for it. If it does, you know, it's a wick, it's a falling knife, you know, back to like $1.06, which happened in seconds the other night. Unless you got a limit order ready to go and you're happy, you know, it's a small limit order and they can fill it. You know, and it's denominated in a trade that's USD or USDC versus XRP. I think there's going to be a lockup in markets when that fall happens. I don't think there's going to be much trading going on, and I don't think people are going to have the capability to buy when that volatility takes place. Most of the time when there's that type of volatility, exchanges go down also. So again, I know a lot of people are wishing they would have bought more at $1.80 or, you know, years ago when it was 50 or 30 or 20 cents. I think those opportunities are gone. And I know that's going to be hard for some people to swallow. And again, this is just one guy's opinion. Listen to other people. There may be other people smarter than me that have outlooks that don't believe that, and that may play out. But that's my position on it. But yeah, I think this is the start of them pushing liquidity into XRP to position it so that when all of this unfolds, it's got a spot, and that the impact of those things won't take it to zero, basically. All right. AmServe says Operation Economic Outcast, or AKA sanctions on USDT via secondary sanction and sanction non-US based crypto. I mean, it seems pretty viable to me. You guys have heard me talk about Tether being potentially sanctioned for a long time now. And now we have Bessent coming out literally talking about financial warfare on anybody that has tethered themselves to Iran. Why would he use that language if that wasn't the deal, right? Is it to throw people off? Maybe. I don't think so. Rides. They say, hey, Jake, when price appreciation happens, how quickly do you think it will go up, and will it get over $100 quickly? Thank you for all that you. God bless you and your family. Like I said, I'm coming to. A lot of people want the path here. We've been over this in the mastermind, and I don't know is the answer. Just candidly, I don't know. If I'm giving you my best guess is we run to 50 or $100 in a very short period of time. We see the unwind happen. There will be volatility. XRP will pull back with the market. During that volatility, we may have a BlackRock ETF and other things in place that they rotate liquidity into XRP from the broader market to be able to push it to a value that they can then stabilize, you know, global markets with and use it for real-time settlement to be able to stimulate growth in the economy. That is the order of operations that I see kind of playing out here. I think we're starting this move to the higher prices that I just talked about, 50 to $100 is what I think is going to be possible on this move. And again, not financial advice. Do your own research, come up with your own conclusions, watch a bunch of other people. I am not the end-all be-all. I don't have insider information or anything like that. So, you know, do your own research and then make your own decisions, and talk with a financial advisor before making those decisions. I've read that Kyle Berkshire just broke his own record, hitting a long drive of 589 yards. You had better get swinging. Oh, and he did it in Wyoming. So I've never played golf in a high altitude environment. My long drive, I played around Saturday and I drove the green. It's 375 yards, and we're at sea level here in Dallas. But it was 104 degrees outside, right? So, like, ball flies further when it's hot. Up there in Wyoming, the air's thinner, and the ball goes further. So, yeah, I'm not going to hit it as long as Kyle. My swing speed's like 135 on a good day if my back's not hurting. Kyle's younger than me. I don't know if you guys watch him on Instagram or not, but he's got the long hair. Dude crushes it. And he's been continually increasing his swing speed. I think his last swing speed record was like 157. Ball speed off the face is like 220 or 230. I'm not there. I could, if that's all I focused on and didn't do any of this stuff, then maybe I could get there. But I would like to do a long drive competition just to see how I stack up against those guys. I watch those like the long drive guys on Instagram, and it's fun to watch. And I compare myself to them all the time when I'm out there on the course. Kyle hits all of his clubs about 20 yards further than I hit mine. So he's hitting pitch and wedge 180. He's hitting, a 2-iron like 320, 330. I'm not quite there. My 2-iron goes about 280. Driver's about, I land the ball about 330 to 350 if it's a good one. All right, Morgan. They say, "Hey Jake, appreciate you, mate. Good to see you. Why would institutions pay top dollar for XRP on open market to drive price when they might have pre-negotiated escrows or new liquidity was needed and have been accumulating?" So you've already got many of these large banks and institutions buying the ETFs for an allocation to hold on their balance sheet to be able to offset debts that they currently have. So I agree with you. I think that there are some pre-negotiated options contracts on the escrow that we will see. Wasn't the point, Jake, 589. I know Kyle has no idea on XRP. Some cool people that do know about XRPs like Joey Swoll. I don't know if you guys follow Joey Swoll or not, but you should check him out if you don't. Most golfers have no idea on XRP. There are a few that we've had conversations with, but they're few and far between. So back to the question here. Why would institutions pay top dollar? They've got the dollars to do it. And they also, this is the same thing that I deal with on the billionaires and the family offices that we work with. And the same reason that Berkshire Hathaway didn't invest in Apple until it was already a very high valuation in the stock market. They want things to be de-risked. They want institutional adoption. They want assurances. They're not going to risk their whole business on a hope or a dream. Many of us do that, right? Like we're still in wealth creation mode. We're not a fiduciary that's managing trillions of dollars. They don't have the luxury to risk things on quote unquote penny stocks, which is kind of how they view this space. So now that we have, the CFTC and the SEC providing guidance, I think that's what spurred the move here this week. We hopefully will get the OCC providing guidance around stablecoins. Stablecoins will bring in a ton of liquidity into crypto. And at that point, that's when you're going to see a lot more price action on these tokens when we do see the OCC come out and issue that guidance. So for them, it's risk. Just like the other gentleman mentioned, it's 1,250% risk on their balance sheet. They need that to be much, much lower. They need a high stable value. And then once it meets certain specifications, and there's certain things they can't even hold on their balance sheet because they don't meet those specifications. Now, I would argue that these institutions may have some XRP and some of these options contracts that they can execute, or they may have it hidden on their balance sheet in software, because this is technically software. And if you were buying this token or this stuff in order to be able to utilize it for your business, you could hold it in that bucket on your balance sheet. So IP and software could be a way that they're disguising their positions. But all that being said, back to my point, people that are managing large amounts of capital want things that are de-risked before they enter the market, and they're willing to pay a premium once that's already happened in order to get an allocation for the next move higher. You don't see, like I said, a Berkshire Hathaway buying Apple early on. They need to understand the business. They need to see that it is going to, continue to do well and be around, and is an established leader in a market before they're going to participate. Just a different paradigm than retail is really what it comes down to. And again, we've talked about this before. Wealth creation and wealth preservation are two very different skill sets. I'm hopeful that a lot of the conversations that we've had here publicly and what we shared in the mastermind have prepared people to make that shift, that paradigm shift on the other side of price appreciation for them and how they manage their balance sheet and their assets. Razorback must be in Arkansas. They say, "Hey, Legend, my wife and I enjoy seeing you in Atlanta. With the December 6th NASDAQ being 23.5, can they do T1 settlement and delay?" I thought they were moving to 24.5 on that date. I think they're moving to 23.5 in October. We're gonna give it a Google here. 24.5 NASDAQ settlement December 6th. You are correct. I'm wrong. It is 23.5 that is scheduled on December 6th. So it looks like they're going to be tokenizing the stock market for normal trading hours in October, and they're going to be moving to 23.5. They could still have T+1 with 23.5. Appreciation on XRP and implementation of back-end settlement of the stock market, 24.5 then becomes viable because they're not settling. They don't have that hour in order to be able to reconcile and settle all the trades. I don't know what the benefit of tokenizing the stock market without instant settlement is, though. We're coming to the end of the fiscal new year for governments and a lot of institutions here in September. September 31st is a lot of their fiscal new years. If you are going to restructure debt and do that in a way to provide economic stability before midterms, I would think they would do that at the end of the fiscal new year. So, I'm not saying 100% that we're going to see $100 XRP by the end of September. But if I were in the driver's seat and I knew that that's when the end of year was for the majority of people, that would be kind of my target date for getting this done by. So we also have, depending on the calendar and the riddles and all the stuff that you look at, you got Rosh Hashanah, which is the 12th and the 13th this year, which is right after the Egyptian New Year and the Coptic calendar and the Ethiopian New Year on September 11th. So is there there? We will find out here in the next couple weeks. DFW Mike, he says, "Evening, Legend and the Tea Lady. Hope all is well in the sweltery heat. 63 and listening at the campfire tonight. Question, do you drink beer or no? Be safe, be blessed." Appreciate you, dude. I don't know where you're, you must be up in Wisconsin. I think is where DFW Mike is this week, where it would be 63 degrees. It's not 104 like it is here in Texas. It's like still 90 degrees outside. What? 108. My wife says 108 today. The golf ball goes further, so that's what I'm excited about in the heat. I do not drink beer. I think the last beer I had was Blue Moon, probably 4 or 5 years ago was the last beer that I drank. When I drink, I drink socially. I don't normally drink at home. If I've had a really long day, I might have one glass of bourbon. But for the most part, stay away from the alcohol unless I'm in a social situation. Drink an old fashioned every once in a while, and that's kind of what I stick to. But beer is, the reason I don't drink beer is there's a lot of calories. It also increases visceral fat. So the fat around your organs, that's why you see a lot of people that kind of have a pot belly, and they call it a beer belly, right? It comes from drinking a lot of beer because it increases the fatty tissue around your organs, which is also a marker that leads to all-cause mortality and inflammation in your body. So it's something that I don't really participate in. If I'm going to drink, I stick to liquor for the most part because it's healthier. Edward, he says, could BlackRock already have XRP locked up for future ETF pass through as a pre-negotiated deal with the Ripple escrow? What would affect our supply shock thesis? Would that affect the supply shock thesis since it wouldn't change circulating supply? I do think that BlackRock has accumulated a position in order to be able to roll out their ETF and that could be some of what you're seeing in the market now. OTC desk and dark pools would be a way that they could do that without affecting price. My best guess is we still have about 1 billion XRP out there on the OTC desk and dark pools currently. Ripple's escrow will be released on the 1st. They've been putting out, 300 million per month. Ripple could withhold their XRP that they normally put on the market and re-escrow the whole thing. They haven't ever done that. They've always sold some. But, depending on the price appreciation of XRP and what they're doing, they do have a substantial amount of XRP still held in their wallets that they haven't sold off, if you're watching those wallets. So all that to say, it's plausible that they could have a pre-negotiated options contract that they could execute in order to be able to fulfill their obligations on the ETF. But I think that they would just do it through the OTC desk and dark pools, as long as there's enough liquidity there to be able to do it. And then at some point, that volume will move to the exchanges once that becomes dry, and that will still cause a supply shock. My thesis is predicated on a lot of demand all at once in order to be able to drive the price to where we all would like to see it, right? It is a perfect storm scenario in order to be able to get to the $50,000, $100,000 level. And we've got all the factors out there, but we have to see the dominoes fall in order to be able to actualize or realize that outcome. So, you could, how do I say this? There's lots of holes that you could try to poke in my theory. And that's why it's a theory until it happens, right? I'll say it this way. I would not continue to come out here and put my neck on the line if I wasn't very, very confident that my thesis is accurate and going to play out. Rick Johnson, my man, he says, TF hat, if you are wrong again about price appreciation in 2026, here's another one. If you're wrong again about price appreciation in 2026, then you will be disgraced as badly as a Union general fighting Joe Hooker at the Battle of Chancellorsville. Well, General, are you Lee or Hooker? In high school, I played against a high school here in Texas that was General Lee's high school. It was my freshman year. We played state against them, and they've since changed the name of that high school. It's no longer General Lee's high school. But yeah, I think I'm going to win the battle. I wouldn't have a public bet, and I wouldn't, like I said, at any point, if I feel like my thesis is off the table or this isn't going to work or the dynamics or constraints have changed, I come out here and I'm real with you guys, right? Like I have an ego. I definitely have an ego, but I try to be humble enough to receive new data or information, take it in, internalize it, review how that affects the current situation, and then be able to pivot or change if necessary. The core thesis that I have around this hasn't changed. The timeline hasn't changed. The macroeconomic events that are playing out right now align with the thesis still happening this year. So I'm still very confident that that is going to be the case. T. Nicole, they say, King Kong, you've hinted that a BlackRock ETF is imminent, but BlackRock state that new ETFs depend on client demand, which they qualify at $3 billion in XRP ETF assets. XRP sits at 1.7 billion, so approximately a year away. Thoughts? Why don't you go ask Steve at Canary Capital? So Steve has been on a few different podcasts. We actually threw an event with them in Nashville, Canary Capital, and he's stated that he believes a BlackRock ETF will come about in late Q3 or early Q4 in 2026. I don't know what time it says on your calendar, but my calendar says we're entering late Q3 of 2026. And could it push out into early Q4? Sure. But the ETF issuers probably have conversations with other ETF issuers. But to your point, the market cap of XRP does need to be at a certain level, and they need to have a certain level of interest from their clients in order to be able to roll things out. I don't know if you've seen the interest on the Bitwise ETF the last week here, but pretty substantial. We had a 100 million come in on Thursday last week, 72 million on Friday, and we had another close to 100 million today in interest on the Bitwise ETF for XRP. So demand is rising in the market for the XRP ETFs, and I'm sure that BlackRock is very well aware of that. All right, we got Pride. Good to see you as a social member. Appreciate you being part of the community. He says, thanks for all that you do. God bless. What conversations or indicators led you to believe that the Bank of Japan would hold an unprecedented emergency meeting? Appreciate you being part of the mastermind. If you guys want to check out the mastermind, we share a lot more than we do here publicly over there in the mastermind. Try to provide you financial education, business resources. We do private events and all kinds of fun stuff over there. So if you want to go check it out, it is at beyondbroke.com, and you can use the code beyondbroke, all capitalized, the number 1, and then MO like Mary Oscar gets you the first month for $2, month to month, no contract, cancel anytime. But we do have a lot of cool people like Pride here. They continue to stick around and pay to be part of that group because it is, I think, very valuable. All right, so back to the question at hand. Bank of Japan emergency meeting. I won't say who. I went to the first XRP Vegas, and people share stuff with me online, privately in DMs and other stuff, and then have for years. Because I've been, not to say that I'm anybody important, but like even in 22, I was on Twitter in spaces, and we had some cool people show up in spaces, and other people had conversations in the background, and so I went to XRP Vegas, and there was a gentleman there that I had talked to in DMs. And a few people that I had talked to had sent me, some conversations, or not really sent me some conversations, but shared some information that they had also had with that individual. And so I talked to that individual there at XRP Vegas and asked them specifically about my domino theory. And basically was told there's a there by this person that would have, I'm not going to say all the information. And this is the other thing I want to say here publicly. There has never been anybody specifically that has said this is how this is going to play out. This is what I want you to go talk about publicly. Nobody's ever given me any of that. I have just had over 300 different conversations where people have said different things that I was like, ooh, that plays in this way in my theory, right? And that's how I was able to put all this together. But what I'll say is that specific conversation let me know that there's some people in Japan that are advocating for XRP and its adoption. And they're not small people. They would have some say-so with the Bank of Japan. And when the situation arises, makes sense that, there would have to be unprecedented circumstances require unprecedented action, is what I would say. So even though the Bank of Japan has never had an emergency meeting, we have had plenty of emergency meetings here in the US. There have been other nations that have done the same in certain dire circumstances or liquidity crises or issues. So it's not out of the question that they would do the same under those same types of circumstances. And I believe that the circumstances that currently exist probably are a prelude to that environment where that would be necessary. William, thank you for the super chat. I don't see a question, but I appreciate the super chat. The one Ali says, does DAG help create LLCs that aren't for digital assets, real estate, etc., looking for new LLCs, looking to set up a few LLCs and hoping DAG can help me do so? We can form it in Wyoming. We can form it in other states. The holding company that we structure in Wyoming does have the ability to hold other assets. If it's for real estate in particular, there's additional liability and risk with each one of those properties that you're buying or managing or however you're structured. And you would probably, most people that I've seen be successful in real estate, set up an LLC in each state where they have ownership of that property inside that LLC. So it insulates the risk. So if somebody falls on the property or somebody sues the property, it's not going to be able to bleed to the rest of your estate. Now, that economic interest, it's that corporation that owns the underlying asset, can be held by a holding company in Wyoming that is anonymous. You know, we structure it in a way where that could be the holding company that owns that interest, and we would be happy to help you do that alongside structuring it to be able to hold your digital assets. The management of those properties, you probably want a separate LLC doing the management of those properties. So the revenue that would be paid to that LLC would be, you know, paid to you. It would be a flow through entity. You could also structure that in Wyoming, but I would have the economic interest in those companies that own the LLCs that own the properties held in one company, and I would have a management company that was separate of that that provided the services for the management of those properties. So if somebody sues the management company, they're not going to be able to come after the underlying assets. That was the one thing that I did learn in my business law class was, you know, how to structure and use corporations and all that. Very few classes in college that I actually still use today, but that is one of them. But on the digital asset side, if you're watching this and you want that structured, starting to see some price movement here. Normally when people are somewhere between $50,000 and $80,000 in total portfolio value for their crypto is when they will start looking at setting up a holding company to manage those assets. There's a lot of good people out there doing it. I would say that we're, you know, the largest and the one that's done the most. $1,500 is what we charge in order to structure that there in Wyoming. There are ongoing costs for, you know, maintenance and all of the documentation to maintain your creditor protection. So if you want to learn more about that, you can go over there to dhg.com, talk to our team, and they're happy to run you through everything that we provide. And we would love to work with you if that's something you're interested in. Dungeon Dojo, they say update. Daughter, who didn't know login last week, found it. Excited for her. Also, getting over what she would have had last week versus this week. Yeah, I mean, I'm glad that she found it. And that's the other piece here. Like, if you lose your seed phrase, if it's burnt in a house fire, I don't know if you guys remember the fires that were going on in California. I know some people that are fairly large crypto holders that even had their stuff stamped on metal plates, and plates melted in those fires, and they lost access to their portfolio. So if you have something like that, I'm not saying that arc plate's a bad thing. Shout out to T Boone, Tyler. He does sell the arc plates. If the fire's hot enough, it'll still melt that arc plate. So that's why I think we kind of marry the best of both worlds. Institutional custody, it's still in your name. You have beneficiaries on the account. You can sleep easy at night. Versus, you know, if you have less than $500,000 in crypto, cool. You know, holding it on a USB drive or, you know, another one of these cold wallets, you know, we recommend Decent for that. We're an affiliate, make like $5 if you know, use their stuff. I think people should have options. I think you should have your assets spread across multiple things. I think we're a good option for a portion of your portfolio. And, you know, but when you start managing millions of dollars, you probably want some assurances. You want insurance on it. You want, you know, all the other additional protections and continuity with your estate planning. And that's difficult to do if you're holding it on a cold wallet and your family's not familiar with the technology, and you have those additional risks associated with that for loss. XRP rules. Love the name. They say last week said if settlement live in October and wasn't XRP, the thesis is over. Would that mean that 2026 is make or break? If not, by end of year, then not. I kind of think so. If I'm being honest with you, I kind of think so. Predicated on the fact that Monica Long said that, you know, 2026 would be the year for the institutional adoption at scale for XRP and the XRP ledger. Institutional adoption at scale doesn't happen at $1.50. It's got to be a very high, liquid, stable value for institutions to adopt this and hold it on their balance sheet and use it. So, yeah, if you want to call it make or break, I'm kind of with you on, you know, the rest of this year. That doesn't leave much time. That leaves us another 4 months here in 2026. Tyler Vaughn, he says, Jake, what's happening? I highly doubt it. With what's happening, I highly doubt it. But is there any reason to worry about traveling outside the U.S. to Mexico next week? Sounds like fun, dude. Wish I was going to Mexico next week. I guess I could. We have a lot going on. I don't think so. I'm not overly concerned about that. Mexico still seems friendly. If the war escalated and something were to happen, I don't think that's a jurisdiction that we would box out or have problems with. They're not affiliated with Iran. We don't have sanctions against Mexico. They're our neighbor. We export and import a lot of things from them. Canada's the same way. So I don't think so. I mean, the world can change at any moment, but as it sits right now, I don't think there's a whole lot of risk with that. T. Nicole, they say, Charles Atlas Jr. I'll take it. Thank you. Appreciate that. You've often said clarity is not necessary for XRP. Brad G recently said they touch 17 billion in transactions, but less than 1% is on chain. If we don't require clarity, why isn't this 100%? Oh, man. Things take time. And I think that they will garner a large portion of that and move it on chain by the end of the year. The amendments that are on the XRPL for digital identity, permission domain, permission DEX, and credentials still need some movement and implementation with those counterparties. If you listen to that same speech by Brad Garlinghouse, he talked about agentic payments. And people are optimistic about that. You've obviously got MasterCard trialing those things. You got investments in T54 by Ripple for Know Your Agent and the digital identity around agents and, who's responsible under what circumstances and guidelines. And he said, I think there's a lot of optimism around this, but it's probably still 3 to 5 years away before, actual adoption by CFOs and treasurers and other people managing that amount of money before they're comfortable with using an agent to be able to do those transactions on their behalf, which I agree with him. And nobody would know better than them because obviously they're managing G Treasury, which is now Ripple Treasury under Ripple One, their vertically integrated product that they've rolled out. So, as we see tokenization of the stock market, I think to be honest with you, I think the main piece here is liquidity on chain and stablecoin issuance. Like I've said before, I think that's the big unlock for a lot of this. When we get guidance from the OCC and we see stablecoin proliferation at scale, the liquidity on these networks, they become much more efficient. There are actually buyers and sellers and marketplaces that will be created on chain. That's why a lot of the tokenization of the funds and other products by Securitize and many others really just haven't got the traction that they were hoping for. Like, cool, you tokenized a fund. Like, what can you do with it now? Well, we were going to put it in a marketplace. Are there buyers in the marketplace? Well, no. Cool, I can fractionalize my ownership. I think that there'll be, liquidity mechanisms where people are able to borrow against tokenized assets before we have, at scale marketplaces. Probably another 12 months or so before we have actualization of marketplaces on chain. But I do think by the end of the year, they will move a substantial portion of at least their transactions, if not more, onto the XRPL for those capital flows. So I don't know what his stated goal in that was. I could see 20 to 30% of their capital flows moving on chain by the end of the year. If things just continue at the pace that they are, if we do see a lot more liquidity move on through stable coins and XRP's price, that could be a higher value. But under the current constraints and the trajectory of things, that's kind of my estimation on what portion of their business they would be able to utilize and move on to the XRPL by the end of the year. James, he says, if I buy XRP on exchange, is it taxed? If I buy on, it's taxed. If I buy on RRSP or TFSA, it's not taxed. What's better? You guys know, if I don't know what a term is, I will try to figure it out. Registered retirement savings plan in Canada. Okay. And I'm assuming the other one is also a tax advantaged type product there in Canada as well. Also, yeah, tax-free savings account in Canada. Learned something new today. Appreciate you bringing that to my attention. If you're in Canada, those both sound like great options. Here in the US, you could use a Roth IRA in order to be able to trade and sell and buy and do things with your XRP so that it's not taxed. If you're holding it in your personal name or inside of a corporation, you're going to be subject to those taxes. And that's why many people will borrow against their position. Obviously, there's interest associated with that, but that's far less than the tax implications you deal with. Inside of those tax advantaged accounts in Canada, I'm assuming that there's similar constraints to what exists here in the US. I could be wrong about that. I'm not as familiar with Canadian laws. But there's some limitations if your XRP is held inside of a tax advantaged account here in the US. You cannot borrow against the principal. So that limits your ability to participate in certain products by using XRP as collateral. You can still run options strategies on it. You could do, a collared strategy where you're buying and selling puts in order to be able to generate premium to create cash flow, which would be fine. And you could also trade the XRP through an algorithmic strategy like we have for our IRA products at DAG Wealth without any tax implications to continue to grow your position, both cash and XRP. I'll say, that product has performed really well during the current market circumstances that we've had since we've rolled that out. People that are participating in that with us inside their IRA are doing awesome. So we don't currently offer those types of accounts at DAG Wealth, but it's something we would look into if we had enough demand for it. And if you can buy inside those accounts, I would do a cost to benefit, because again, you're going to know this better than I do because you're Canadian, and obviously, you've brought it to my attention, so it's something you're looking at. I would run it through an LLM, and I would say, what are the limitations of my use of the XRP in order to be able to generate income or do other things with it if I buy it inside of this tax advantage account versus in my personal name, and then see what it spits out. And then based on that, depending on how you want to use it, if you're just holding it for long-term appreciation for your retirement, or if you're trying to actively earn income off of it in the short term here as we see price appreciation, that might change your opinion on whether you want to do it inside that account or, in another way. Jason, man, thank you for the super chat. He says, AI payments or bank payments, what goes up first, Casper or XRP? So I actually talked to Casper not that long ago. I think that they're going to be at our event next year that we host in April, which will be cool to see. Actually, I have another meeting with them this week. I like Casper. They have, private and permissioned, along with a public infrastructure. I think that there's a lot of, enterprise use cases for that network. Hedera did kind of snatch their AI game that they were playing and move it over to Hedera's blockchain. I think liquidity begets liquidity, and I think XRP is the first move before Casper is going to see its adoption at scale. Again, my best guess, I'm just one dude on the internet, take it with a grain of salt, listen to a bunch of other people. I owned Casper. I bought Casper at 13 cents and wrote it down before I consolidated in 22. So, it hasn't performed really well, or the time that it's been around. They've had a hard time getting distribution across exchanges, and they really kind of lost a lot of traction when that AI infrastructure moved off of their network over to Hedera because they had more money. So, but I'm hopeful. I'm bullish on Casper over the long term, just not as bullish as XRP for me. I'm going to go all the way to the bottom because we are already more than an hour into the conversation here, and work my way back up. Roughing it. Hey, ma'am, how are you? She says, I had a dream that I was trying to find a horse cup to send the tea lady. Now I'm going to need to know where we're supposed to be sending these gifts. If you really do have something, you can email us, and I'm sure she would be happy to receive the horse cup. She's here. I'll say this. My wife is in the market for a horse. She's probably not going to like me saying this. She's in the market for a horse. I'm going to give y'all what I think she wants, and then she's going to grade me later and probably yell at me when I'm wrong. My wife likes quarter horses. She wants something that is 14.2 or 14.3. She likes bay gildings. Ideally, it can be double registered as a quarter horse and a paint horse. She likes blaze face, few stockings, somewhere between 7 and 10 years old. Has done rodeo drill team, would be ideal. And, if it's team pinned or roped or had something else swung over it, they ride with flags. So that would be good. She is an experienced rider. So if it has a lot of buttons, or if it's, I don't want to say crack-a-lackin', or, it needs to be able to go, if you ask it to go. Broke. It could be the perfect horse. And I've always told her this, like, as long as it's sound and everything else is good, I'm okay if it cribs. And I think she would be too, if that's its only bad habit. If it loads well, if it has good ground manners, it can be clipped and bathed and not an issue. If it's not running off and gets caught easy, there's all these considerations when you're buying a horse. If you've never bought a horse, my wife's a cowgirl, so I didn't know any of this stuff before we got together. But if you have a horse that meets that description and you want to send it over, or she's in the market for one. Let's see here. Alex, good to see you. He says, will you ever write a tell-all about how all this came to be after price appreciation, including names and stories of conversations you had inside the TPs with the chiefs? Probably not. Maybe like on my deathbed, I would put together like a memoir or something. Yeah, I could do that at that point. I think I would be far enough removed in order to be able to come out with something like that. But it won't be this decade. I can tell you that. There's been a lot of things that have been shared in confidence or NDAs and other stuff that I'm not one to kiss and tell on that type of stuff. I try to be as open and transparent as I can be, to relay the information and provide, enough backing that you can do your own research and go look at stuff and come to your own conclusions. But yeah, it would be a while. I am, actually, we are releasing a book. So that'll be out on the market hopefully this week here. It's called Everyone Gets to Win. And it's a parable about a lot of the conversations that I've had, not specific around XRP, but like managing wealth and the paradigm of the successful people that I've talked to in my life and how they operate. So we keep you guys updated when that's up on Amazon and, over there at the other bookstores and stuff. I'll share it with y'all. And if y'all want to read it, great. If you don't want to read it, that's okay too. I think it's cool. KT Baby. She says, institutions don't buy money to operate. So why would they buy XRP? If XRP is a bridge currency, Ripple needs to make sure they have it. That's why allocating the escrow makes sense, yes. This is kind of the same conversation that I had with the node guys. And in the perception in the market is that XRP is used and then swapped and not held. And to facilitate value transfer, that is accurate. The piece that becomes the linchpin for XRP's price appreciation is it becoming premium collateral. As XRP appreciates in value and people need to hold that on their balance sheet, and it does get a designation from the BIS as a tier 1 asset, they then can back other things. They can post it as collateral. They can participate in liquidity pools. They can operate in the derivatives markets. There's a lot of things that being a capital asset on their balance sheet would help them with. And if you were looking for something to restructure the debt against that would rise in value substantially to be able to offset the liabilities or losses that they're currently holding on bank balance sheets and other enterprises have, this becomes a really attractive asset for that situation in order to be able to get out of that hole. And that is the main purpose that I think many people will be holding it on their balance sheet, is not for the money component or the transfer or to be able to utilize it in their infrastructure. It's more to be able to offset the debts and restructure their debts in order for everything to work out so there's not a financial collapse. Jayhawk Nation, I'll be up in Kansas City here in the near future. Good to see you. Rockhawk Jayhawk, he says, legend. We're looking at other countries to move like Singapore or Japan during this global rebalancing. Any issue you see with our assets staying at DAG while we're gone? No. We're happy to work with anybody globally. So if you are international, if you're watching this, you're in the UK, the EU, the UAE, if you're in Singapore, if you're in Japan, if you're in Brazil, wherever you're located, we can manage those assets for you over there at DAG in Anchorage. And as long as you are not on a sanctions list or a bad actor, we're happy to work with you. Go explore, man. Go. I'll say this, a lot of people haven't ever traveled abroad. Thank you, Alex, for the super chat. Highly encourage people to go get exposure to other cultures and see other places when you have the resources to do so. Just, I don't know, like growing up here in Texas, I thought the rest of the world was like Texas, right? Like you just have this paradigm around how everything exists. And when you travel other places and see other cultures and how people operate, and also going to places that are not quite as prosperous or abundant as the US is really eye-opening as well. It makes you really grateful for everything that we have here: running water, a home, access to financial products and resources and jobs and vehicles and all the other infrastructure and like just things that you think are standard in your life that you kind of take for granted. Other people don't have. And it is really eye-opening if you go to places like the Dominican Republic or Haiti or Jamaica, a lot of the island countries, even EU, or like New York, as an example. The space that they have in New York in order to be able to operate, I don't know how they do it. I'm fine to visit New York. There's no way I could live there. I'm used to having, a lot of room to move around and do stuff here in Dallas, and everybody's right on top of one each other there in New York. And some people love it. Like they've grown up there and they can't imagine being any other way. I need breathing room. I don't want to be around that many people all the time. So anyway, I just encourage people to travel, whether it's Singapore or other countries, and just experience things that you've never seen before. I think it's good for your kids too. I'd say that. All right. Going back up here. Katie Baby again, she says, did we reach 589 town hall calls in the mastermind? Pretty cool. You know what? I would like to know that. That's a really good question. I was talking about that this morning on the live or the town hall that we had. I think we're pretty close because we've done one every single Monday and every single Saturday for, you know what? We'll do the math on it just for you, KT Baby. I think we started the town halls in March of 2023. So if there are 52 weeks in a year, times 3, because 3 years would have been March this year, that's 156 times 2 calls per week. And then we've had another April, May, June, July, August. August is almost over, so 5 months. So 5 times 4 is 20. 20 times 2 is another 40. Not quite. We're probably at around, we've done carbon 2 calls and other stuff, so I bet we're pretty close. I bet we're at like 550, 560 total calls there in the mastermind. It'd be really cool if it was 589 on the day that XRP goes. Just did that one. And again, if you want to join the mastermind, if you want to check those out, you can listen back to every call that we've ever had. They're all recorded there in the group for the past 3 years. So thousands of hours worth of content for people that participate in that group that you can consume. I will say it's like drinking through a fire hose. There's a lot of stuff there. to be able to increase your financial prowess. A lot of business resources on the website. We're actually going to redo the whole website here in the not too distant future. So we'll be making that announcement here soon as well. And again, if you want to be participating in that community, we would love to have you. On the other side of price appreciation, which, you know, if you're looking at the chart, she's starting to climb a little bit here. On the other side of a $10 XRP, we are going to lock it down. We will be not accepting any new members. It will be invite only, and the prices will be substantially higher. So if you want to get in there, check it out, try it out before that happens. If you think we're on our way to 10 bucks and higher in the near future, would encourage you to do it. Again, cancel anytime, month to month, no contract. So if you don't like it, it doesn't work out, it's $2 to try it. Fabricated. They say, if I escrow my XRP, what would the onboarding process be like after price appreciation? You'd have to wait till you unescrowed it from the wallet that you escrowed it in. So for those that don't know, you do have the capability to escrow your XRP. You can go to XRP Toolkit. It is a website. You put in the wallet address that you want to add there. It'll verify on whatever device or thing that you're using. And then you have the ability to escrow and do some other things on the network. You can time lock escrow your XRP. And yeah, you can send it back to yourself in a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, whenever you want to do it. My only concern with doing that at this point is if you do think that quantum will be a risk in the future. Cold wallets could be exposed. I don't think that that's an immediate risk, but I do think if you're doing it 2 or 3 years out from now, there's a possibility that that could be a problem. So just, again, not saying that that's a high risk or that you should not use the escrow mechanism or any of that. I'm just saying that you should take that into consideration when you're doing something like that. But we wouldn't be able to onboard you and move into institutional custody on our side until that XRP had come back to you and you could transfer it to your account there at Anchorage. Johnson, not Rick Johnson. He says, first off, love you, dude. Thanks, man. Appreciate you. Second, did you predict that XRP would be at 10K before designated a tier 1 asset and then said that it could happen as soon as Q1 or Q2 2027? Yes, that is what I said. I've said Q1, Q2 next year for $10,000 XRP for a while. If things really move toward the end of this year and things were aggressive, it could be Q4 this year. Probably Q1, Q2 next year. I do think that the Clarity Act will pass in February of 2027. I don't think we're going to get that this year. We got the cloture vote, here in September. As long as that goes through, they move it to a Senate floor vote. The thing got to go back to the House and be passed through the House. And then it's got to go to the president's desk to be executed and signed into law with the midterms and everything else and the other SAVE Act and all the other stuff that's also going to be a priority after Congress returns here in September. I do think that the Clarity Act will end up getting passed, especially now that we have joint guidance from the SEC and the CFTC. I think that this administration is going to get it done, but I don't think it's going to be this year. And that gives Ripple some time. It gives other players some time. Gives XRP some time to have a moat. David, he says, Beyond Broke Mastermind member. Awesome, dude. Glad to have you in the group. In your opinion, what is your favorite chip shot you like that helps with overall swing? Favorite chip shot that would help with overall swing. So when I chip, I use the stack and tilt method. So this was popularized like toward the end of my high school career. You would keep your weight on your left foot and kind of put the ball back in your stance and kind of do it like a long putt. That's primarily what I use. I tend to use like a 48-degree or a pitching wedge when I'm hitting chip shots, unless I'm going over a bunker or something. Then obviously I'll use like 60 or 54 and try to clip it and spin it a little bit more. But as far as like helping with overall swing, if you were going to use the stack and tilt method, you're not transferring your weight. So you're not going to have as much power. But I will say that there were players that I played with back then that were exceptionally good ball strikers and played very well using stack and tilt. So that's kind of when I'm hitting those types of shots, I'm not transferring weight on chips. I stay on my left side, and I kind of play it like a long putt, and I try to take the club back on the same plane that I would take for a full swing. So I don't know if that helps you or not. Again, I am not a golf pro. I did shoot 67, which is the best round of my life, about a month and a half ago. The recent rounds I've been playing have not been as good. My back's still not great. And I'm scared coming into the ball. And so I'm pulling up to stand up because my back's hurting. And that's causing me to like block it out to the right or hit a big hook. Not fun. Working on it. Cobra Chicken. They say, hey, Jake, the DAG 25K offer came at a really, really bad time for me. Anyway, that offer could be extended. Really want to jump on it, but cannot right now. I wish we could. Unfortunately, we really kind of get one promotion per quarter that we can run on the wealth side. And so we have to provide, timelines around that. We have to file it with our ADV. There's some compliance and regulatory pieces when we do something like this that prohibit us from extending things. We cannot offer any client something we don't offer all of our clients. There's been a lot of manipulation of that, through wealth management's history. And so the SEC doesn't look kindly on, providing people extra stuff outside of the scope of exactly what was listed in the ADV and the filings that you have. So we have to be, because of the regulatory compliance and everything, unfortunately, there's not a way that we could extend it. It is open till September 4th. So hopefully things change for you here in the not too distant future. Maybe it'll change for a lot of people. I think a lot of people may qualify over 500,000 in the not too distant future. And we would love to work with you. And I wish there was something that I could do on that, but because of the compliance and regulatory requirements, I can't make exceptions for anybody, and neither can our team. And it's not like I could anyway. I don't work on that side of the business. We have a CEO. I really am out of the day-to-day operations at this point, pretty much at all on DAG. I'm the chairman and founder. So I'm very much high-level strategy, working with, creative partnerships. Obviously, some few of our large clients like to ask my opinion on stuff, but I don't have access to their assets or any of those things. I will connect people. If you have a problem and it gets escalated to me, I can talk to our team about it and try to help fix it. But at the end of the day, I don't have any influence on the stuff over there. And I don't have any access to anything either. Anthony, he says, hello, Jake and the tea lady. I will see you on 9/26, hopefully to celebrate. Please explain best fasting routine for men for weight loss. Excited to see you out there in Tahoe. We do have an exclusive event for Carbon 2 and higher there in the mastermind. So that's the one that he's talking about. We will be up there playing a little golf and enjoying the cooler weather up there in Lake Tahoe in late September. So the fasting routine that I have seen be most successful for men trying to lose body fat aggressively is alternate day fasting. So you would fast for 20 to 24 hours, and then you would eat the next day. You would actually eat more calories than you would normally consume, or your TDEE. You can use a TDEE, Tom, David, Echo calculator in order to be able to figure out what your metabolic rate is and how many calories you're burning per day. On the days that you do eat, you can really eat like 125% of those calories. You want those to come from clean food, not fast food and other crap. You want things to be probably lower glycemic, so close to keto if you can for the majority of those meals. You can have carbohydrates around training, an apple or banana or sweet potato are probably the best choices. But in the days that you fast, you just don't. I go dinner to dinner if I'm doing it, because that's a social meal for me. I like eating with my family. So I'll have dinner at 6, 7, 8 p.m. and then I don't eat again until the next day. I don't train on days that I fast because you're breaking down muscle tissue and you don't have any other protein in order to be able to repair it. So the days that you eat would be the days that you would weight train if you were going to do that. You can still do cardio every day of the week, especially if it's low intensity, steady state cardio, if you're just walking for an extended duration. But people that have done that protocol, I've seen lose, they've started at close to 300 pounds and dropped all the way to around 200 pounds in 6 to 8 months. Hormones are a big deal. We had a couple people in the mastermind talk about TRT and different hormone protocols, peptides, all that other fun stuff to be able to optimize for performance and quality of life. So, we try to provide holistic stuff there in the mastermind, relationship stuff, financial stuff, health stuff, because all those matter, right? Like you can make a bunch of money, but if you're not healthy, that's your only concern. So, appreciate the question and look forward to seeing you there in Lake Tahoe. Beyond Blessed, love the name. They say, legend. Appreciate everything that you've done and created. Keep up the positive, keeping us positive and right-minded through this time. Will DAG be able to get products if, say, multiple people want to put up 20 million and earn yield? That's what keeps me up at night, if I'm being honest with you. We have about 420 million XRP under management currently. As we see price appreciation, I mean, you can think about it like our AUM just in the last week here has gone up 50% in dollar terms. That's a lot of liquidity that people want to put to work and be able to generate returns and yield with. The products and solutions that we're rolling out currently do have limitations because of our counterparties. Those will change quickly as things work out and they issue a larger credit line and we're able to do more with what we have. There is one counterparty that does not have any bandwidth or limit issues that I'm hoping we get across the line in the near future. And if that one comes through, we would be able to put everything we have and much more to work. And they would also scale with us. So I'm praying a lot on that one. And I'm hopeful that materializes here in the very short term, because I do believe we're on the precipice of this stuff moving. And what you touched on here is exactly what keeps me up at night. I want to make sure that people have access to these products and solutions when this happens, so that they're not forced to sell, the golden goose that could produce returns for their family for multiple generations. I would rather people be able to pocket it, keep it, maintain it, and use it to supplement their lifestyle, create cash flow, borrow against it, and maintain exposure so that, they're not having to sell it off. Again, not saying that selling it's a bad thing. I think that you should do what's right for you and your family. You should have a plan. Hopefully you've worked with a financial advisor, or you've worked up something, that you're going to be able to stick to yourself as we see things aggressively move here. But that is the thing that I think about the most. I want to make sure that we have solutions that are more than enough to cover the fees that we charge. We want to be providing value, not taking value. And I feel like for the last year, I don't want to say let people down on that. I think we've done a good job being a good steward of the capital and providing products and services. But it's not to the level that I hold as a standard, because I want products that people can put their XRP safely to work in and, know that it's good and they're going to be generating cash flow every single month to be able to supplement their lifestyle. Like that is the goal. And I wish I could tell you guys we're like right there. And I am very hopeful that we'll see it, hopefully here in September. Easy peasy. I'm going to see you on Friday, my dude. He says, hey, brother, excited to host you on the channel this Friday. You're a legend. Lots to talk about. Appreciate your humility and supporting of the small channel. Yeah, for sure, dude. So I appreciate you. Cheers, my man. When I first got started, people afforded me the opportunity to come on their show. Shout out to Molly Elmore and Lewis Jackson, Zach. There were a lot of channels, DAI, Brad, Kimes. There were a lot of people that were nice enough to have me on and let me talk about all the crazy stuff that I say, which has not turned out to be so crazy. And I think will continue to be proven right over the long term. but I'm in a great position now. You know, it's been wild to see the growth of the channels and YouTube and all the other social media stuff. Like to see 6,000 people on here watching and all the people that are on TikTok, I never would have thought that people would have cared this much about what I have to say. It blows my mind every single day. I'm humbled and grateful, and I feel so blessed to be in a position to be able to make an impact and help people. So when people reach out, if I can help you, just like other people help me, I want to pay it forward. I want to help other people. You know, there's mutual benefit on that, right? But like, yeah, happy to help other people in the community, and I appreciate you having me on, and I'm excited for the conversation we're going to have on Friday. So don't forget to go check it out. Easy peasy. He's here in the comments. Easy XRP peasy. Go check him out. Give him a follow if you don't already. Matt and his dingo. He said, Bessent said digital asset technology, gold, aviation, and shipping. In that order. How about them apples? Thanks to the Beyond Broke Mastermind. Can't wait, buddy. Yeah, I mean, pretty interesting order of events that he laid out there. We'll have to see if sanctions on Tether happen or not. Hydro Newbie, he says, Jake, I wanted to let you know that Aaron and Stefan have been doing a great job for us. Keep working hard for us. Thank you. Say hi to Honest Aim for me. I sure will. Talk to them today. So I will let them know, and I appreciate the kind words and the flowers. I will pass those on to Aaron and Stefan. They are two of our advisors over there at DAG Wealth, and I'm glad to hear that it's been a positive experience for you. They've been around here for a while. They do a really good job. I'll say this. I again, so blessed and grateful for the employees and everybody that we have on our team. Have close to 100 employees across the organization at this point, and to see the growth and everybody's excited to come to work. Everybody gets fulfillment from the work that they do. They get to help people. Another cool one. I'll say this because it was cool for me. It was a good moment. I was in the office the other day, and one of our sales leads came in, and she was having a conversation with a group, and I just popped in just to see how she was doing because I don't see her very often. There's some people in my organization I don't even talk to. Again, I'm not involved with the day-to-day. So when I have the opportunity to talk to somebody, like I want feedback about the organization and how they feel and their experience and, where they want to be in 5 years. So I got to talking to her, and she said that she was able to pay off her debt with the last check that she got working here. So I don't know. That's a cool feeling that you're making an impact for your employees, and they're able to do things in their life that are goals and achieve things that they had set out to do when they started working somewhere. Anyway, I just figured I'd share that. It was cool for me. I don't know if that's cool for you guys or not, but it was nice to hear. Tap in. They say Jake Bezos. Not on Bezos's level by any means. He says, the reverse carry trade is happening, no doubt. I agree with you, my man. He says, what's your perspective on the dollar milkshake theory? Brett has a really interesting theory. I think Michael Gayad also goes along with that theory. If you follow Michael's work, he believes in the reverse carry trade. He believes that a lot of liquidity is going to flow into U.S. Treasuries when all this plays out. I tend to think the opposite. I think that international holders of U.S. Treasuries are going to dump U.S. Treasuries when all this plays out. When yields spike, I think that they're going to move into their own treasuries to be able to stabilize their own country's economy, Japan included. I think other people will rotate into Japan's bonds and, China's bonds and Russia's bonds. I think they're going to divest from the U.S. dollar. But I do think there will be value in U.S. bonds because of the stabilization of the bond market that's going to come from the issuance of stable coins and now the tail end of the bond curve from the $1 trillion that we're going to deploy in order to be able to stabilize that. So I do think that the bond market will be fine. I think that they've put things in place in order to be able to handle the volatility that's incoming when all this unwinds. But I don't think people are going to run to the dollar like Brett thinks. It's not going to be the global reserve currency moving forward. You've heard J.D. Vance say that and many others at this point. And that is kind of what his theory is predicated on, is the US will remain the global reserve currency. Pro Jim, I say legend. What's up, dude? Blessings to you and the tea lady. Thank you very much. Same to you and your family. Beyond Broke Mastermind, appreciate you being part of the group. Did you see that iTrust had a data breach? Thank you for the community and knowledge. Let's go price appreciation. From what I saw, they did not have a data breach. So I actually want to be specific about this. They came out and made a statement that they did not have a data breach that they are aware of. So any misinformation out there that iTrust has had a data breach, I really wouldn't listen to. I would trust from their mouth. I think that they would take ownership if they did have a data breach. And I think that that's misinformation that's out there in the market. So shout out to them. I think that they have a good product, a good platform. I think that they help people out with the IRAs. You know, if you want to say we're a competitor, I think we kind of are. I'm just happy that there's people out in the market doing a good job and providing these, you know, tax advantaged accounts for people that want to own crypto. So they actually, from what I understand, did not have a data breach. And anybody that's putting out that misinformation, you should tell them that they didn't have a data breach. Honest Aim, he says, Mr. Legacy and the Tea Lady, good to see you, sir. Just wanted to say, to note, we saw you drinking a brown liquid from a clear glass with a single ice cube. We're waiting for a toast at $10. I'm sure it won't be long now. I have to drink the wine that's in the XRP bottle that was given to me when we see price appreciation on XRP. So I will pop that bottle of wine. I do drink Cabernet if I'm out and I'm having a steak. That's the only other thing that I drink that's alcoholic besides the old fashioned. But when we see the price appreciation, I will, instead of my tea, I will drink an old fashioned on here with you guys. It'll probably be in the mastermind, just to be candid with everybody on here. I'm not going to be going live publicly. I will be in the mastermind with our community members there when we see everything play out. But obviously, you know, I will come back here and have a live with you guys post price appreciation as well. And I'll drink an old fashioned. Well, cheers. Brian Foster, he says, Kamala Stevenson still thinks we're a few years off from this taking off. I don't think she knows, or maybe she's just playing it safe to win. This thing is going to take off. I agree with, well, you know what? Kamala is extremely intelligent. I watch a lot of her content. People send me stuff that she puts out all the time. She's great. I think, you know, like I tell you guys, you should watch a bunch of different people. Don't just, you know, take my word for it. There's other very smart people, and you can come to your own conclusions on timeframes and the cadence in which this is going to happen and what has to play out and for it to happen. I will say this though, you know, a lot of people do hedge. I'm not one to hedge. I tell you guys what I really think. That's bit me in the butt also. So I can see why other people wouldn't want to do that. I don't know. I'd rather just be real. And maybe that's exactly what she thinks. She seems real. She seems authentic. I don't get the vibe from her that she's like being coerced or like, you know, told to say this or that. That's probably what she legitimately thinks. So, you know, again, I don't, maybe she's not hedging, but there are other people out there that hedge because they have been so beat down. They've done content for a long time and made calls and, you know, got it wrong, which I'm here too. But yeah, I don't get that vibe from her. I don't think she's hedging. Like I said, she puts out really good content. I like watching her stuff when I get the chance or when somebody sends me something. But, you know, like, this is the other thing I'll say. If you do think it's way off in the future and that's what you have in your mind and it does happen sooner, you'd rather be pleasantly surprised than disappointed. I think people set timeframes around certain stuff and they have certain expectations and maybe they over leverage themselves in the short term, hoping that things move faster than they have been. And then they get emotionally tied to it. And when it doesn't occur in whatever timeframe they had expected, they're mad, which is fair, right? Like there's lots of times in my life that I've had certain expectations which weren't met in jobs that I've had and other stuff, and I've been very upset. So But those things are also self-imposed, is the other thing I would say. If you have certain expectations, even if they're predicated on somebody else's thoughts, you are a grown person. Most of the people watching this, you get to decide what your emotions and your expectations are. And taking ownership of that is part of being an adult and being responsible. And that's hard. Most people don't ever do that. Most people don't ever take responsibility for their own life and their own actions. It's a lot easier to blame other people and make excuses and say this happened because of that and the government and taxes and all these things. The people that I've seen be the most successful are the people that take ridiculous responsibility for everything in their life. And they believe that things are happening for them and not to them, even bad things. I've had a conversation with one of our very successful large clients the other day, and he's going through some very rough stuff. And he said, there's a silver lining. This has all happened to me for a reason. I don't know what that reason is yet. He has a good relationship with the Lord, prays about it a lot. But he takes radical responsibility for everything in his life and all the decisions he's made. And he's aware that the decisions he's made up to this point have led to the situation that he has in his life, and that there's a bigger plan for him. And these things that are happening to him now are preparing him for his ability to execute under more pressure and everything else that he's looking for in his life. So I'll get off my soapbox. I'm not trying to preach at anybody, but I've just seen that pattern over and over again. People that do take significant responsibility or complete responsibility for everything that's going on in their life tend to be the people that are the most successful and actually can have an effect over it and aren't making excuses for themselves about what's happening to them. Everything happens for them. Ray, he says, can you tell us how your company got so big overnight? Just seem you come out of nowhere. I don't mean any harm. Just seems like you might be backed by the power that be. You know, it's a good question. I'm actually on a podcast in 2 days where I'm going to go over everything about that. We have scaled very quickly. I think that there's a lot of different things that allowed that to happen. I think we were at the right place with the right time with the right product. I look at everything through leverage, and I've talked about this on here before, but there's 4 forms of leverage. You got content, code, capital, and collaboration. If you listen to Naval Ravikant or Alex Hormozy, both of them talk about that. I try to involve every form of leverage that we can. We've got significant distribution through the social media channels and all of that. We really, when we got on Brad Lee's podcast, that kind of bumped things. Like I said, we've been on other podcasts. I'm at events all the time. I do podcasts, 5 or 6 of them a week. It's a volume game. A lot of it is for that side of the business. And then on the growth side we've been able to acquire really good talent. Almost all the money that the business has made over the past 3 years, we've rolled back in. I will defer gratification for a long time in pursuit of something greater. And that's what's allowed us to scale. And that's also what's allowed me to replace myself over and over and over again in the business. Most business owners won't do that. They want to take, a large chunk of that capital out. They want to improve their lifestyle, upgrade their lifestyle, buy assets, and do other stuff. I really hadn't done that. If anything, I've rolled more capital into the business over and over and over again and continue to double down on the bet. And that's, again, like I said, we've scaled to a team of close to 100 people. We brought on executives. In the last 6 months, we've made some really strategic hires and brought over some really good people in order to continue to make sure that we're shored up and the business is in a good spot to scale as we see price appreciation and we can actually deliver on a lot of the stuff that I talk about here. I live 5 years from now all the time, which is a really weird paradigm because I have to exist in the reality that is today. But I see the future like crystal clear on what our company looks like, where we're at, what we're doing. And then, I've hired people to be able to execute on all those things because that's where I lack is like, I'm really good at grand vision, seeing all of that and giving us a North Star. And then I've hired people that are operators and they're killers. And they come in and they take that and they work that back to tangible daily actions and things that we need to be executing on in order to be able to actualize the vision. And most business owners don't do that. Most business owners think that they are the person that can do everything and nobody can do it as good as them, and they're not willing to give up quote unquote power over things. They become the bottleneck, and it inhibits their growth and their ability to scale. And the reason that I'm able to do that, I'm not trying to pat myself on the back. I worked in M&A for about a year and a half before I started this business, and worked with business owners to help them scale their business. And they would get to a revenue of around $10 million to $30 million, and were happy like a lark, and like they just wouldn't give up control or hire the executives. They said that they didn't have the money, or they would make excuses on stuff. But yeah, I'll do a whole tell-all in one of the interviews that I've got this week on like all the hardships that we've gone through, different decisions that I've had to make at different points in the business in order to be able to scale. And I'll probably just keep this. We got a couple more super chats that I'll get to. I got 2 more that I'll do, but I would say the biggest decision that allowed us to scale at the rate that we have is August of 24. We were looking for a COO and CCO, and Erin Freeze came about. She was in between. She had offers from the New York Stock Exchange, another startup, and us, and she took our offer. She had worked at DAR, which is Digital Asset Research, helped them scale that. They were a competitor to the CME. She was head of digital assets at PNC, and I hadn't taken a paycheck up to that point from the business. Like I said, we had rolled everything back in, everything that we had earned. And I won't say the number that she told me that she was offered from the New York Stock Exchange, but to hear the number that she wanted to come over here and work for us was like gut wrenching for me, because again, I hadn't even taken a salary, and I was going to be paying an executive multiple 6 figures in order to get her over here. And I made the call and said that we would be able to do it. And that was the best decision that I made, or one of the best decisions I ever made in the business, because you have to get A players on your team. She is an A player. She is the CEO of Digital Ascension Group at this point for many reasons. A players have a playbook. They come with other A players, and they have a team of people that will follow them from other businesses. So if you can find somebody like that in your business or your vertical, whatever you're working on, and pay them more than you pay yourself in order to get them onto your team, which most people are not willing to do, that was the unlock for us to be able to scale. Because again, like I said, I have the vision, I know what it looks like, but to have the operator to be able to piece all the puzzle pieces together and connect everything and execute, we would not be where we're at had we not hired her at that time. So anyway, I'm rambling on here, but I really appreciate the question. And I do think that I'll be able to provide a lot of value on that podcast for people that are business owners that are looking to scale stuff. Because we have gone from, we did I won't say numbers on here. I'll give them on the podcast though. Mush, they say, I really wish you could win your bet. I'm going to. But almost everyone who understands XRP, the math, and data says it's impossible and laughs at 3 to 4 digits. They won't be laughing when it's there. They're going to be very upset. Or if they have an allocation, they're going to be pleasantly surprised. We'll end on this one. Sean says, the legend. Hope all is well. Are we still headed for a hot girl summer? Labor Day is the last day of summer. It's also the last day of our promotion for the 25K. So I do think so. I mean, the hot girl summer, it's taken a while. It's taken a long time, but we are starting to have the hot girl summer. I'm looking at the chart over here for XRP hanging out at $1.51, looking like it's about to break out again. So yeah, I think that we're in for a fun week, a fun next couple weeks here as we go into September. And I think you guys are going to enjoy the tail end of summer. So I think that's a good note to end on. As always, if you would like to learn more about our services and everything that we do at DAG, whether that's estate planning, helping you, plan your taxes, financial planning, the wealth management, end to end, we try to do everything, meet you where you are. Insurance, you name it, we have it. For crypto, we'd love to work with you or have a conversation if that's something you're interested in. You can go over there to dag.com, set up your LLC, your trust, all the fun stuff. And then if you want to join the mastermind, we'd love to see you over there before we lock it down here on the other side of a $10 XRP. You can go over there to beyondbroke.com, use the code beyondbroke, all capitalized, the number 1, and then MO, like Mary Oscar, gets you the first month for $2, Carbon One or Social. Check it out, month to month, no contract, cancel anytime. But we do have over 17,000 people there in the group that continue to pay and participate in that community. And I think that says a lot about the value that we provide. So with that, I'll wrap it. I hope you guys have a wonderful Monday night, a wonderful week. We'll see you on Wednesday. God bless. And we'll see you on the next one.